Chapter 1. The dream, a soft orange glow filtered through worn curtains, painting the small desk in Aisha's bedroom with the promise of dawn. She sat hunched over a tattered notebook, heart pounding in her ears as she traced the words, 1. Day, I will speak English like it is my own voice. The ink bled slightly on the rough paper, but the sentiment held firm, a declaration born from countless nights of secret yearning. Tears threatened to spill over, not of sorrow, but of fierce determination. In that fragile dawn, she imagined herself standing before an audience, her words sweeping across the room like a gentle breeze, clear, confident, alive. As a child, English had been a distant land, unreachable and mysterious. Lessons in the eye. Crowded classroom felt like climbing a mountain in slippers. Every step was an effort, and the summit always seemed just beyond reach. Even simple greetings twisted on her tongue, leaving her cheeks hot with embarrassment. She remembered the hush that fell whenever the teacher called on her, as if the whole class held its breath, waiting for her inevitable stumble. Those memories were painful, yet they fueled her dream. She refused to remain trapped behind the walls of silence. Late at night, Aisha would watch videos of speakers from around the world, mesmerized by their fluid speech and the confidence in their eyes. She'd pause and rewind, imitating the rise and fall of each sentence, the gentle rhythm of native accents. Though she struggled to match their clarity, each attempt was a step closer to her goal. In the soft glow of her laptop screen, she felt both vulnerable and hopeful. An explorer charting unknown territory, her heart brimming with questions and expectations. That morning, as the first bird calls drifted through her open window, Aisha pressed her hand to her chest and whispered a vow. I will become fluent. I will let my words carry the music of my thoughts. The notebook before her felt sacred, each line a testament to her unwavering resolve. She closed her eyes, envisioning a future where language would no longer be a barrier, but a bridge, uniting her with stories and souls she had only ever dreamed of reaching. And so, with trembling fingers but unshakable spirit, Aisha rose from her desk and stepped into the new day. The road ahead was uncertain, winding through moments of triumph and doubt alike. Yet in her heart, a single truth shone brighter than fear. The journey to fluency would awaken not only her voice, but the deepest parts of her courage. Chapter 2. The First Words. The first word Aisha learned in earnest was hello. Simple, ordinary, yet charged with possibility. She whispered it to herself each morning, practicing intonation before the bathroom mirror. School peers mocked her accent. Hello? They teased, yet she clung to the sound, repeating it until her tongue found its own path. Each syllable, no matter how imperfect, was a declaration against the silence that had long confined her. With hello secure, she moved on to thank you, a phrase that felt like offering a gift. Aisha left sticky notes on her family's fridge, each bearing the words in neat block letters. When her mother cooked dinner, Aisha placed a note beside the steaming plates. Thank you. The smile that blossomed on her mother's face was enough to banish any lingering shame. Language, she realized, could carry warmth and gratitude as easily as confusion. Yet learning isolated phrases was like building a wall one brick at a time without mortar. The real challenge lay in stringing those bricks into sentences. So Aisha downloaded an app, its icon a blue speech bubble on her phone. Every day she completed guided lessons, matching words to pictures, listening to native speakers, and repeating until her voice faltered less. The app tracked her streak. Day 21, day 30, day 45. Each milestone felt like a celebration, even if the victories were small and private. One evening, speaking into the app's microphone, she encountered a tongue twister. She sells seashells by the seashore. Aisha laughed at the way her accent wrestled with the sounds, turning seashells into seychelles and seashore into shishao. Yet she kept going, replaying her attempts until the twister rolled off her tongue with growing confidence. The exercise felt playful, almost like practicing scales on a piano, each repetition strengthening muscles she didn't know she had. By the end of the week, Aisha could string together 5 or 6 words into a hesitant sentence. It wasn't poetic, but it was hers. "Hello, my name is Aisha. I like reading books." She spoke it aloud in her bedroom, heart fluttering as the words rose and fell. In that moment, she tasted the sweetness of possibility. Though her accent remained thick and her sentences choppy, each utterance carried the promise of a future where language would no longer hold her back. Chapter 3. Walls of Silence. Despite her progress, Aisha often felt trapped behind invisible walls. The crowded hallways of school echoed with laughter that stung her ears, a reminder that she still sounded different. In conversation groups, she sat quietly at the edge, unsure when to leap in. Even when she mastered questions like, "How are you today?" she hesitated, fearing interruption or misunderstanding. The silence pressed against her chest like a stone, weighty and relentless. At home, she practiced reading aloud from her textbooks, but her family's polite smiles offered little guidance. Her younger brother teased her pronunciation, while her father nodded distractedly over the newspaper. Though they supported her dream, they lacked the tools to help. Aisha yearned for a community of learners, someone who truly understood the battle between desire and doubt. The loneliness made each stumble feel catastrophic, as though every misstep confirmed she would never break free. One afternoon, on her way home, Aisha noticed a small community center advertising English Conversation Club, all levels welcome. Her heartbeat quickened. Inside, a diverse group of strangers gathered in a cozy room, sipping tea and exchanging stories. Nervous energy buzzed in the air, but there was also warmth, an unspoken invitation to belong. She took a trembling breath and stepped forward. At her first meeting, Aisha sat beside Jamal, a friendly face with a bright smile. He introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Jamal. I'm still learning too." Relief flooded her. Here was someone who shared her struggle, someone who stumbled over compound tenses just like she did. They exchanged awkward introductions, their sentences punctuated by laughter at mutual mispronunciations. In that moment, the walls of silence cracked. Week by week, Aisha returned, each session chipping away at her fear. She listened as others told stories, in broken phrases, in staccato bursts, in hopeful stutters, and recognized herself in every attempt. The conversation club became her sanctuary, a place where mistakes were stepping stones rather than failures. With each shared word, the walls loosened, and her voice found new paths to freedom. Chapter 4. A kindred spirit. Among the faces at the club, one stood out. Maya, a soft-spoken artist from a neighboring town, whose bright eyes spoke volumes when her words failed her. Maya painted in vivid watercolors, landscapes, portraits, dreams, but struggled to describe her art in English. Aisha watched her fingers trace invisible shapes in the air as she searched for adjectives, and recognized a kindred spirit. They began partnering for practice, meeting daily after class in the school courtyard. Their friendship blossomed quickly. They shared lunches, Maya's homemade hummus and Aisha's sweet mango slices, and traded stories that wove their cultures together. Maya taught Aisha how to capture emotion in color, explaining the nuances of hue and shade. Aisha showed Maya how to practice dialogue using role plays, pretending to order coffee in a bustling cafe or ask for directions on a crowded street. One afternoon, under a sky painted with lavender twilight, Maya confessed her fear. "I want to exhibit my paintings in the city gallery, but I cannot talk about them in English. I am too afraid." Aisha's heart tightened. She understood all too well that paralyzing dread. She reached for Maya's hand and said, "Let's practice your artist's statement. Teach me about your paintings, and I'll help you find the words." They worked late into the evening, Maya describing each stroke, each choice of palette, Aisha translating those emotions into sentences that flowed. "This swirl of blue is my hope," Maya would say in broken English, and Aisha would shape it into something like, "The swirling blues in this piece embody the fragile yet persistent hope that lives within all of us." Maya's face glowed when she spoke those lines aloud, the words fitting her vision as perfectly as paint on canvas. Through Maya's artistic courage, Aisha found her own. She realized that fluency wasn't about perfection. It was about conveying soul and intention. If Maya's art could bridge the gap between culture and language, then so could Aisha's voice. Their partnership became a mirror, reflecting each other's potential and illuminating the path ahead. Chapter 5. Lessons in Patience. Fluency, Aisha discovered, was not a sprint but a marathon of patience. There were days when progress felt invisible. Her tongue seemed to trip over words it had once spoken easily, and staccato sentences reminded her of her earliest stumbles. Frustration would rise like a tide, threatening to drown her resolve. It was in those moments that she learned the greatest lesson: to be gentle with herself. She began keeping a journal, writing a short entry in English every night. Not perfect prose, just a few sentences about her day, her thoughts, her hopes. Some nights the words poured out like water. Other nights she wrestled with basic grammar until her eyelids drooped. But the act of writing itself was a testament to her growth. Weeks later, she'd read back earlier entries and marvel at how far she'd come, how the clumsy sentences had blossomed into coherent reflections. To strengthen her listening, Aisha turned her daily commute into a classroom. She downloaded podcasts, stories, interviews, discussions, and listened through cracked bus windows as the city roared by. At first, the voices blended into noise. Now, she caught familiar phrases, understood jokes, and even predicted the endings of anecdotes. Sometimes she laughed aloud at a witty punchline, drawing curious glances from fellow commuters. But she felt alive, an active participant rather than a passive observer. In her spare moments, she practiced shadowing, playing back, short audio clips and speaking along in real time, matching pace and intonation as closely as possible. Her first attempt sounded comical, a rapid-fire blur of words she could barely parse. But gradually her voice grew steadier, more confident. Shadowing didn't just train her mouth. It attuned her ear to the subtle rhythms of natural speech. Most important of all was conversation. Every weekend, Aisha volunteered at the community library's reading program, assisting children with bedtime stories in English. She introduced tales of courage and curiosity, guiding little ones through new words, encouraging them to pronounce adventure, mystery, and imagination with wide eyes and open hearts. Their laughter and wonder fueled her own. Practice. If she could help them discover joy in language, she could learn to love every stumble on her path as well. Patience became her steadfast companion, whispering reassurances when progress slowed. It reminded her that each fragment of learning, each practiced sentence, each listened story, each shared laugh, was a tile in the mosaic of fluency. Chapter 6. Voices in the City. The city itself became Aisha's classroom. On weekends, she wandered busy streets, peering into shop windows and reading signs aloud under her breath. In the cafe down the block, she ordered coffee in English. "A medium latte, please." Every visit, refining her tone and timing. The barista, a cheerful young man named Leo, learned her name and greeted her with genuine warmth, offering new phrases. "Can I get you anything else?" "Enjoy your drink." Their friendly exchanges became anchors in her journey, each greeting a small triumph. One Saturday, she joined a walking tour led by a volunteer storyteller. The group gathered beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient oak in the Central Park. As the guide spoke, Aisha marveled at his fluid narration, how he wove history and humor into a seamless tapestry. Her notebook filled with notes. "Use storytelling to captivate listeners," she scribbled. Afterward, she approached the guide, introduced herself, and asked if she might practice recounting one of the stories. He smiled and agreed. Aisha's heart raced as she stood before a dozen strangers, retelling the tale of the city's founding. Her voice shook at first, but she leaned into the story, recalling the vibrant details she had practiced, the hero's journey, the twist of fate, the triumphant resolution. The listeners leaned forward, eyes bright. When she finished, they applauded. In that moment, the city's voice merged with her own, lifting her above the barriers she had once imagined insurmountable. Every street corner offered lessons. The subway announcer's crisp articulation, the street musician's call for donations, the newsstand seller's banter. Aisha recorded snippets on her phone, later replaying them to study cadence and stress. She filled her room with sticky notes. Stand out, come aboard, next stop, Central Station. Slowly, her environment reconfigured itself from a maze of foreign sounds into a symphony of learning. Yet the city could also be harsh. Passers-by who ignored her, whispered comments about her accent, the impatience when her broken sentences slowed a fast-paced exchange. Those moments stung, but Aisha refused to retreat. Instead, she reminded herself of every encouraging smile, every nod of comprehension, every time a listener waited patiently as she shaped her thoughts into words. Those moments far outnumbered the harsh ones, and she held them close. Chapter 7. The deepest fear fluency, Aisha realized, demanded more than words. It demanded vulnerability. The night before her biggest challenge yet, her heart pounded like a drum. The school had invited foreign exchange students to a cultural showcase, and Aisha was to introduce the program in English. It was an honor and a gauntlet. She paced. Her room, script in hand, mind racing with doubts. What if I choke? What if I mispronounce a key word? What if the audience laughs? Memories flashed unbidden. The teasing at school, the hushed silence in class, the stinging flush of shame. Aisha sank onto her bed, tears pricking her eyes. She felt the familiar tug of retreat, the urge to hide behind her notebooks and apps. But then she remembered her vow at dawn, her countless evenings spent rehearsing, the friends who had cheered her on. Behind every doubt lay 1,000 tiny victories, the first hello, the tongue twisters mastered, the stories told in the park. With trembling hands, she opened her journal and wrote, "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's speaking despite it." She repeated the line aloud, each word a balm. Then she stood and walked to the full-length mirror. She straightened her posture, raised her chin, and looked into her own eyes. There she found someone who had fought for every sentence, who had built a voice out of fragments and dreams. At that moment, fear ceased to be a barrier. It became a reminder of how far she'd come. Chapter 8. The Night of Transformation. The auditorium lights bathed the stage in golden warmth as Aisha stepped up to the microphone. Dozens of faces looked back. Exchange students, teachers, families, curious onlookers. Her palms were clammy, but her gaze was steady. She inhaled deeply, recalling the breathing exercises she had learned. In for 4 counts, hold for 2, out for 6. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice soft but clear. The pause that followed felt like an eternity, yet she heard a ripple of encouragement. She continued, "My name is Aisha, and it is my honor to welcome you to our cultural showcase." Each word carried the weight of her journey, from secret wishes in a darkened bedroom to this bright moment of connection. As she spoke, something shifted. Her nerves transformed into energy, fueling her delivery. She wove anecdotes about the exchange students' experiences, navigating new foods, discovering friendships across cultures, finding common ground in laughter. She paused to explain a local tradition, then guided them to the next performance with natural ease. The script she had memorized became living conversation, shaped by the audience's smiles and nods. When she concluded, "Thank you for being part of our story tonight," the silence that followed was profound. Then the applause rose, a wave of sound that lifted her off her feet. Aisha closed her eyes, letting the moment wash over her, the culmination of every lesson, every stumble, every quiet victory. She had spoken not just fluently, but authentically, infusing each phrase with her earnest heart. Backstage, Maya embraced her in tears. "You were amazing," she whispered, and Aisha laughed through her own tears. In that embrace, she understood the true meaning of fluency, the ability to convey ideas, yes, but also to share emotion, to build bridges of understanding, to speak in a voice that resonates with others. Chapter 9. The Fluent Heart In. The days that followed, Aisha's world felt transformed. Conversations with friends flowed more effortlessly. She joked in class, answered questions spontaneously, and even corrected her own mistakes with a shy grin. The apps and journals remained tools in her arsenal, but they were no longer chain. As he carried, they were springs lifting her forward. She took on new challenges, applying for an online storytelling competition, volunteering at an international film festival, and leading an English debate club. Each endeavor tested her skills, pushing her to refine pronunciation, expand vocabulary, and hone persuasive arguments. Yet she no longer feared mistakes. They were simply steps on the path of lifelong learning. Aisha also mentored newcomers at the Conversation Club, offering guidance born of empathy. She taught them breathing exercises to steady nerves, shared shadowing techniques for listening practice, and encouraged journaling as a way to track progress. Watching others blossom under her care filled her with a profound sense of purpose. One evening, as she reviewed journal entries from the previous year, she was struck by the metamorphosis in her own words. From simple greetings to thoughtful reflections on culture, identity, and aspiration. The words on the page were echoes of her journey, a journey marked by hope, perseverance, and connection. She realized that fluency was not a destination but an evolving process, a conversation between her heart and the world. Chapter 10. Beyond words years later, sitting in a cozy cafe in a foreign city she had once only dreamed of visiting, Aisha watched a group of local children practice English songs. She recognized the same mixture of fear and excitement that once lived in her own eyes. From across the room, she caught her mentor's gaze, a wise teacher who had guided her in those darkest moments. He smiled and offered a nod as if to say, "You've come home." Aisha closed her eyes and listened to the children's voices weaving through the cafe air. She thought of the long nights, the stumbles, the breakthroughs, the friendships that had carried her forward. She sipped her tea and whispered to herself, "Thank you," in perfect fluid English, grateful for every challenge that had shaped her journey. Her story did not end here. It continued in every conversation she held, every person she inspired, every barrier she helped others overcome. Fluency had become more than language. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the power of connection, and the beauty of sharing one's authentic voice. And so, as the children's laughter mingled with her own memories, Aisha realized that the truest form of fluency was not measured in flawless grammar or accent. It was measured in the courage to speak, the grace to listen, and the compassion to understand. Beyond words, she had discovered the language of the heart,